Have you ever noticed how people keep testing your limits until one day you decide not to flinch? They laugh at your silence, take advantage of your patience, and mistake your kindness for permission. But what if I told you? The moment you stop tolerating disrespect is the moment they start fearing your presence. It's like a doormat that gets worn down over time until one day it's simply gone. And now people have to pause to wipe their feet somewhere else, or think of a lantern that always burned through the night, quietly lighting everyone's path. No one thanked it, no one noticed it. But the day it stopped glowing, the darkness made everyone realize what they took for granted. That's the weight of your presence. When it's gone, everything feels different. Because while they're busy crossing lines, you have two choices: keep moving the line for them or draw one for yourself. And when you finally draw it, that's when everything shifts. Their jokes stop landing, their control starts slipping. And their harmless comments, they suddenly look a lot like disrespect. So what really happens when you stop tolerating disrespect? Not with anger, not with revenge, but with self-respect. Stay until the end, because the last realization will stay with you forever. Let's get started. Number 1. The right people. Step closer. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood truths about boundaries. What really happens when you stop tolerating disrespect? For a long time, maybe you kept the peace by staying quiet. You brushed things off, laughed at the jokes that made you uncomfortable, forgave behavior that kept repeating, and told yourself, it's not worth the drama. But deep down, you knew it wasn't okay. And the moment you decided to raise your standards, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, you probably feared what would happen. Would people leave? Would they call you difficult, sensitive, arrogant? Here's the truth. Yes, some people will fall away, but the right ones, the ones who actually care about your peace, they step closer. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you're not pushing people away, you're filtering them. You're drawing a quiet but powerful line in the sand, and those who benefit from crossing it will resist. They'll act like you've changed, like you're the problem. But what's really happening is simple. You've stopped making yourself small to make others comfortable. And the people who love the smaller version of you, the quieter, more tolerating version, won't know what to do with the real one. But here's where something powerful happens. This is where Stoic wisdom steps in. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." In other words, the people you surround yourself with shape the quality of your life. When you raise your standards, you send out a signal, not just to others, but to yourself. You're saying, this is who I am now. This is what I will and will not accept. And that signal, it repels the ones who took advantage. But more importantly, it attracts those who truly see you. The ones who respect your space, honor your boundaries, and match your energy. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Rachel, had always been the one who tolerated everything. Rude comments from family, unfair demands at work, friends who only showed up when it was convenient. But one day, after a particularly cruel remark from someone she once trusted, she hit a breaking point. She didn't yell, she didn't make a scene, she just stopped explaining herself. She stopped apologizing for needing respect. And you know what happened? The wrong people drifted away. They called her cold, distant, ungrateful. But others? They leaned in. They noticed the change and matched her new pace. She didn't lose people. She found better ones. So if you're afraid that raising your standards will leave you alone, remember this. You're not pushing people out. You're creating space for the right ones to come in. Because when you stop tolerating disrespect, you don't become harder to love, you become impossible to manipulate. And that's when everything starts to change. Number 2, the wrong people get offended. Let's talk about one of the most uncomfortable but revealing things that happens when you finally stop tolerating disrespect. The wrong people take it personally. Not because you were rude, not because you hurt them, but because your boundaries disrupted the comfort they had gotten used to. These are the people who once thrived in your silence, people who relied on your patience, your over-explaining, your willingness to swallow disrespect just to keep the peace. And the moment you stop doing that, they start calling you difficult, cold, or too sensitive. Here's the truth. People who get offended by your self-respect were never interested in respecting you. They were interested in controlling the version of you that made them feel comfortable. Your silence, your compliance, your constant forgiveness. That was never mutual respect. That was convenience for them. And when you finally draw a line and say, enough, it threatens the dynamic they were benefiting from. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes powerful. Marcus Aurelius said, "The truth is often hated by those who live in deception." When you stop enabling someone's disrespectful behavior, you're holding up a mirror they don't want to look into. You're showing them that what they've been calling normal was actually unhealthy, and they don't like that reflection. So instead of owning their behavior, they blame you for changing. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Chris, used to be the nice guy in his friend group. Always available, always flexible, always the one to smooth things over when conflict arose. But over time, he noticed that his kindness wasn't being reciprocated. Friends would flake on him, borrow things and never return them, make jokes at his expense, and Chris would let it slide. Until one day, after being humiliated in front of others for the last time, he decided to stop laughing it off. He calmly told his friend, "I didn't find that funny. Don't speak to me like that again." And just like that, the energy shifted. That friend got defensive. "Wow, since when are you so sensitive? You've changed." Chris hadn't changed. He had just stopped tolerating behavior that never should have been okay to begin with. And that one moment of truth revealed something deeper. Some people don't want to know the real you. They want the version of you that doesn't hold them accountable. So, how do you handle this? First, understand that offense isn't always about what you did. It's about what they lost. Control, comfort, entitlement. Second, don't shrink back just to restore their comfort. Let them feel it. Let them adjust or walk away. And finally, don't take their offense as proof that you were wrong. Take it as confirmation that you've finally stopped playing small. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly respect you won't feel attacked when you finally start respecting yourself. The wrong people will get offended, but the right ones will rise to meet your new standard. Number 3, you stop explaining yourself. Let's talk about something subtle but powerful. What happens to your voice when you finally stop tolerating disrespect? For a long time, maybe you felt the need to explain everything, to justify your boundaries, to defend your reactions, to make sure no one thought you were being unreasonable. You'd write long messages trying to clarify what you meant. You'd rehash arguments in your head, wondering if you could have said it better. You'd feel the pressure to make your self-respect sound like a request. But once the switch flips, once you decide you're no longer available for mistreatment, you don't need to explain anymore. Your energy shifts. Your words become fewer but more grounded. And the people who used to take advantage of your explanations, they start hearing something they didn't expect. Silence. Not the cold kind, the calm kind. The kind that says, "I said what I said, and I'm done repeating it." Here's the truth. Over-explaining is often a symptom of being disrespected too long. You start believing that maybe if you say it the right way, they'll finally hear you. But they won't, because they were never listening with respect in the first place. And when you finally stop playing that game, your presence begins to speak louder than any defense ever could. This is where Stoic wisdom shines. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do not waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop explaining your integrity. Just live it. When someone crosses your line and you respond with stillness, not silence rooted in fear, but in confidence, that's when the dynamic changes. Let me tell you about someone I knew. Her name was Ashley. She was always the peacekeeper, always trying to smooth things over, always giving people the benefit of the doubt, even when they clearly disrespected her. But over time, something inside her wore down. One day, after yet another condescending remark from a co-worker, she didn't argue back. She didn't explain. She just looked up, said, "Don't speak to me like that," and went quiet. That silence wasn't weakness, it was self-respect. The co-worker tried to joke it off, tried to bait her into justifying her reaction. But Ashley didn't budge, and in that moment, her silence echoed louder than any defense could. She wasn't asking for permission to be respected, she was demanding it, with presence, not pleading. So if you've been explaining yourself to people who keep stepping over your boundaries, here's your reminder: you don't need to. You don't owe long speeches to people who refuse to listen. Your peace is not up for debate, and your boundaries don't require applause. Because the moment you stop tolerating disrespect, your words become fewer, but your worth becomes undeniable. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 4, you develop real self-respect. Let's talk about something deeper than confidence, something quieter, stronger, and more lasting: self-respect. Because when you finally stop tolerating disrespect, you're not just setting boundaries with others, you're starting a new relationship with yourself. Every time you say no to being mistreated, you're saying yes to something else, your worth, and not the version of worth that's shaped by applause or attention. The version that's built in private, in quiet decisions when no one's watching but you. Here's the truth: dignity doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being clear. And the moment you choose not to tolerate what you used to excuse, passive-aggressive jokes, backhanded compliments, dismissive tones, that's the moment you stop abandoning yourself just to be accepted. Because the real cost of disrespect isn't just the moment it happens, it's what it teaches you about how little you're willing to settle for. Stoic wisdom teaches this well. Epictetus said, "He who respects himself is immune to the disrespect of others." Why? Because once you know who you are, you stop needing external validation to hold your ground. The disrespect may still come, but it no longer touches the place in you that defines your value. That's what self-respect looks like. It's not ego, it's not arrogance. It's the quiet understanding that your peace, your standards, your energy, they're not negotiable. Let me share a story. A man I knew, let's call him Matthew, was in a job where his boss constantly belittled him in meetings, made jokes at his expense, acted like Matthew's ideas were always missing something. And for years, Matthew kept trying harder, staying late, over-delivering, hoping one day the disrespect would turn into recognition. But it didn't, because disrespect doesn't go away when you overperform. It goes away when you refuse to accept it. One day, Matthew had enough. His boss tried to humiliate him again in front of the team, but this time, Matthew didn't explain. He didn't get defensive. He simply said, "If this continues, I won't stay in this role." Calm, clear, unshaken. And in that moment, he realized something powerful. He wasn't afraid of losing the job anymore. He was afraid of losing himself. From that day forward, Matthew wasn't the same. He walked differently, spoke differently, not louder, but more grounded. He didn't need to be the best. He just needed to be respected. And that shift? That was self-respect being born, not through praise, but through a boundary. So if you're wondering where self-respect begins, it's here. The moment you stop tolerating what you once excused. Not because you hate others, but because you've finally decided to love yourself without compromise. That's where your dignity lives, and that's where real peace begins. Number 5, you stop feeling drained. Let's talk about something people don't always connect to disrespect: exhaustion. Because disrespect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it hides in sarcasm, silence, or being dismissed when you speak. But no matter the form, it costs energy, an enormous amount of it. The constant need to defend your worth. The mental reruns of, did I overreact? Or maybe it's just me. The emotional labor of pretending you're not hurt when you are. All of it adds up. Until one day you wake up tired, not from life, but from the weight of disrespect you've learned to carry quietly. But then something shifts. You finally say, enough. And that's when something surprising happens. Your energy comes back. Not all at once, but moment by moment, breath by breath, you start feeling lighter. Why? Because the emotional drain wasn't from working too hard. It was from trying to stay whole in places that chipped away at you daily. Here's the truth. When you tolerate disrespect, you're constantly negotiating your value. You're always trying to explain yourself, prove your intentions, justify your reactions. It's like pouring your energy into a bucket with holes. But when you finally stop playing that game, something beautiful happens. You reclaim your energy, and this is exactly what the Stoics meant. Marcus Aurelius said, "Withdraw into yourself. The rational soul is its own refuge." In other words, when you stop giving your peace away to those who won't protect it, your inner strength becomes your sanctuary. You stop outsourcing your stability. You stop chasing peace in people who only offer chaos. Let me tell you about a woman I know. Her name's Emily. She worked in a small creative agency where her ideas were constantly overlooked. Meetings would go on without her input. Credit for her work would be handed off to others. And though she smiled through it, I remember her saying once, "I come home more tired from defending my space than from doing my actual work." That hit me. But one day, Emily made a quiet decision. She stopped volunteering ideas in meetings where her voice wasn't valued. She stopped chasing approval from people who saw her as replaceable. Instead, she poured her time into her own design portfolio, freelanced on the side, and eventually built something of her own. And the irony? The same people who once ignored her suddenly started noticing. Because when you stop tolerating disrespect, you stop bleeding energy. You stop explaining, overthinking, proving. And that energy, it flows back into your life, into your purpose, your creativity, your healing. So if you've been feeling tired for reasons you can't explain, take a look at where your respect is being drained. Because once you plug that leak, your power returns, not just in strength, but in peace. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 6. Disrespect no longer surprises you. Let's talk about what happens when you've finally had enough. Not just emotionally, but mentally. There comes a point where something inside you shifts. You stop being shocked when certain people act a certain way. You stop giving them the benefit of the doubt, not because you've grown bitter, but because you've grown wise. And this is a strange kind of peace, one that doesn't come from perfection, but from clarity. You no longer expect loyalty from those who have only shown convenience. You no longer expect respect from those who can't even be honest with themselves. Here's the truth. When you've spent enough time tolerating disrespect, you start to recognize the signs earlier. The passive-aggressive tone, the subtle shade hidden in a compliment, the way someone always finds a way to make your boundary feel like an inconvenience. It's not that it doesn't hurt anymore. It's that it no longer surprises you. This is where real peace begins, not in controlling others, but in understanding them. You stop making excuses for people's patterns. You stop saying, maybe they didn't mean it. Instead, you see it for what it is, and you adjust. You no longer invest your time where there's no mutual respect. You no longer exhaust yourself hoping someone will one day become who they pretend to be. And this is exactly what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." The Stoics didn't teach us to expect perfection from people. They taught us to expect patterns. Once someone shows you their values through consistent action or inaction, you accept it, not with resentment, but with resolve. Let me tell you about someone I knew. His name was Brandon. He had a close friend who always managed to let him down. Always late, always forgot birthdays, always too busy when Brandon needed help, but oddly available when he needed something himself. For years, Brandon would get upset, feel hurt, question the friendship. But after a while, something changed. He stopped expecting more. Brandon didn't cut the friend off out of anger. He just stopped offering parts of himself that weren't appreciated. He stopped making space for someone who never truly showed up. And you know what happened? Brandon didn't feel cold. He felt free. Because when you stop being surprised by disrespect, you stop being controlled by it. You start moving different. You manage your expectations. You protect your peace. And most importantly, you stop overextending yourself for people who wouldn't do the same for you. That's the quiet power of no longer tolerating disrespect. You become harder to disappoint, not because you've lowered your standards, but because you've raised your awareness, and with that awareness comes peace. Not the kind someone else can give you, but the kind you create for yourself. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 7. You become a mirror. Let's talk about a quiet kind of power. Not the kind that needs to raise its voice or prove a point, but the kind that simply reflects. Because once you stop tolerating disrespect, something profound begins to happen. You stop reacting and you start revealing. You become a mirror, not of who you are, but of who they are. Without even trying, your silence, your boundaries, your refusal to engage in their dysfunction, it all bounces back at them. Here's the truth. People who are used to crossing lines don't expect resistance. They expect you to bend, to justify, to stay. But when you don't, when you stay calm instead of defensive, still instead of reactive, that's when they see themselves. And sometimes, that's the most uncomfortable truth they've ever faced. Because you didn't fight them, you didn't try to change them, you just refused to be like them. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That's Stoic wisdom in its purest form. You don't correct the disrespect by becoming disrespectful. You correct it by refusing to imitate it. And in doing so, you hold up a mirror, one they can't look away from. Let me tell you about someone I knew. Her name was Claire. She was in a relationship with someone who constantly belittled her ideas, made jokes that weren't funny, tried to make her feel smaller so he could feel bigger. For a while, Claire would argue, try to make him understand, explain how it hurt. But nothing changed. Until one day, she stopped. She didn't yell. She didn't plead. She just got quiet. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. The next time he made a cruel joke, she looked at him, paused, and walked away. No reaction, no lecture, just presence. And that silence? It spoke louder than any argument ever had. Because in that moment he was left with himself, his words, his choices, his reflection. And Claire? She didn't mirror his disrespect. She mirrored his reality. That's the power you gain when you stop tolerating what you used to excuse. You don't become hardened. You become clearer. You stop reflecting the chaos back and start reflecting the truth. You become the calm in the storm, the pause in the noise, the mirror in the mess. And that reflection, it doesn't just reveal who they are, it reminds you who you've become. Someone who doesn't need to raise their voice to raise a standard. Someone who doesn't need revenge because their peace is proof enough. That's what happens when you stop tolerating disrespect. Your boundaries become their wake-up call. And you become the mirror they never expected to face. If you believe this video can help others, give it a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show it to more people. And don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content coming your way. Share your thoughts in the comments. I will definitely reply.